The camera flashes were like strobes in a nightmare. Tonight was the annual gala for the city's most prestigious art foundation, and Sebastian was, as always, the center of the universe. He stood on the podium accepting the Visionary Award, his face tilted upward in that practiced posture of noble suffering. I stood 3 feet behind him in the shadows. To the world I was Elena, the devoted wife and faithful guide. To Sebastian I was a utility, a walking cane with a pulse. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling just enough to be charming. "I may not see your faces, but I feel your warmth." The crowd swooned. But then a photographer near the stage tripped, sending a heavy light stand crashing down. The noise was startling, but what happened next was almost imperceptible. Sebastian flinched. Not toward the sound, but away from the sudden burst of light from the flashbulb that went off as the stand hit the floor. His eyes, hidden behind dark glasses, tracked the falling object. It was a micro-movement, a reflex that shouldn't exist in a man whose optic nerves were supposedly severed 5 years ago. Froze. My grip on his cane tightened. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't see a tragic figure. I saw a man watching the room watch him. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. As we left the stage, the mask slipped. "Elena," he hissed, gripping my arm hard enough to bruise. "You were too slow. You're supposed to anticipate hazards." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "I didn't see it happen." "You have eyes," he sneered. "Use them. Or are you as useless as my mother says?" The car ride home was silent. 5 years ago, I was driving the night of the accident. A deer jumped out. I swerved. The car flipped. I walked away with scratches. Sebastian woke up screaming that he couldn't see. The doctors called it psychological trauma, but Sebastian was adamant. The world was black and it was my fault. Guilt is an architecture. It's a prison without bars. I became his servant because I owed him a life. I stopped painting and restoring frescoes to pour my talent into his hands. I described textures, guided his fingers, and whispered suggestions about form that he would claim as divine inspiration. "You are my eyes," he told the press. To me it felt like being hollowed out. We arrived at our brownstone. Vera, his manager, was waiting. She treated me with the polite disdain reserved for hired help. "How was he?" she asked, checking Sebastian's tie. "Perfect," I said. "As always." Sebastian walked confidently into the living room. He didn't use his cane in the house, claiming he had mapped the space. I watched him navigate around the ottoman, avoiding the edge by an inch. I used to think it was amazing. Now it looked practiced. I went to the kitchen to pour his drink, my hands shaking. I thought about the doctor's appointments he refused, the way he texted using voice-to-text but sometimes scrolled with his thumb hovering over the screen. I had buried those doubts under mountains of guilt. Because to doubt him was to be a monster. Who questions a blind man? But the seed was planted. The next morning the studio felt suffocating. Sebastian was working on a chaotic mass of clay called the Sorrow of Atlas. He wasn't wearing his glasses. He said he liked to feel the naked light on his face. Vera was organizing inventory on the high shelves. I was in the corner mixing patina. I watched him reach for his tools. He didn't grope or sweep his hand across the table. His hand went straight to the chisel. Then gravity conducted a test. Vera turned too quickly, her elbow clipping a heavy marble bust of a Roman senator perched on the shelf edge. "Tip." "Oh God," Vera gasped. The bust fell, a straight drop toward her foot. The radio was blaring a symphony. I was 20 feet away. But Sebastian moved. He was across the room. He shouldn't have seen the wobble. But before the marble hit the ground, he lunged. It was a movement of terrifying precision. He caught the 20-pound bust 6 inches from the floor. The thud of stone hitting his palms was heavy. The room went dead silent. Sebastian stood up, holding the head. Then he turned. Not toward Vera but toward me. For one single heartbeat he forgot. He looked directly at me. His eyes snapped to mine, pupils contracting in the light. He wasn't looking past me. He was gauging my reaction. He was checking to see if I had seen the miracle. I had. The invisible chain that bound me to him evaporated. He saw me. He had always seen me. The mask slammed back down. His eyes went vacant, drifting toward the ceiling. He reached out, groping the air. "Did something fall?" he asked, his voice rough. I felt the air pressure change. It was a lie so insultingly stupid I almost laughed. "Oh, Sebastian. You saved me." Vera rushed to him. "I don't know," he whispered, playing the saint. "Instinct. Pure instinct." He leaned on her, looking fragile. But his hands weren't shaking. "Instinct," I repeated, my voice flat. "You have amazing reflexes for a blind man, Sebastian." He stiffened. Vera whipped around. "Elena, don't be jealous. He saved me." "You tracked it, Sebastian," I said, walking toward him. "I watched your eyes. You saw it fall." "I heard it," he insisted, his face flushing red. "My hearing is all I have left." "Why are you doing this?" "Because you looked at me. After you caught it." "I looked toward your presence," he shouted. "My God, Elena. Are you so hateful you can't stand me having one moment of competence?" He was turning it around, weaponizing his fragility. But it didn't work this time. "You're hysterical," Vera said calmly. "It's echolocation. I saved her." Sebastian screamed, ripping his glasses off and throwing them on the floor. "Look at my eyes, Elena. Do you see a man who can see his own wife's face? Or do you see the dead things I live with?" The studio door banged open. Rebecca, my mother-in-law, swept in. "I could hear him screaming from the house," she hissed. She took in the scene and turned on me. "What did you do?" "A statue fell. He caught it." I asked him how. "She accused him of faking," Vera said. Rebecca gripped my chin, her fingers cold. "You ungrateful little mouse. My son is a miracle. You are nothing but the handmaid we allowed to hold the chisel. Apologize. Or get out. And if you walk out, I will bury your reputation so deep you'll never work again." "Mom, stop," Sebastian moaned. "She just wants me to be normal." I looked at them. The martyr, the protector, and the enforcer. Closed loop. If I fought now, I would lose. Had no proof. I lowered my head and forced a tremor into my voice. "I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't understand." Sebastian stopped crying. "Help me to the house. I have a migraine." Took his arm. Felt the muscle tense. "I've got you," I said. And I did. I had him exactly where I needed him. Thinking he had won. I didn't cry that night. I lay in bed next to the man who had turned my life into a service industry. And I let the cold logic of my profession take over. In restoration, you analyze the layers to find the truth beneath the lacquer. Sebastian was a forgery. The next morning I went to a spy shop and bought 3 microcameras with motion sensors. I installed them while he was napping, hiding them in a jar of dried turpentine, a brush jar, and on the steel beam above his workstation. Then I waited. 2:14 in the morning on the second night, the studio door opened. Sebastian walked in. He was dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, no cane. He walked with casual confidence, stepping over cables without breaking stride. He went to the fridge, grabbed a sparkling water, and checked the expiration date on the bottom of the can. He saw everything. But the horror didn't stop there. He went to my workstation. I had been working on a complex clay study of hands. He flipped on the high-intensity work light, a light he claimed hurt him, and studied my work. He measured the knuckles with my calipers. Then he went to his own clay mass. He picked up a tool and began to copy my work. He wasn't channeling inspiration. He was plagiarizing me. He worked for an hour. Then he walked over to a finished bronze cast in the corner, a piece I had practically sculpted for him. He picked up an engraving tool and carved his signature into the base. S. Vance. He stepped back and nodded, the smug satisfaction of a man who believes his own con. I turned off the tablet. The realization hit me hard. He wasn't a genius. He was a parasite. The blind sculptor brand was built on lies and my uncredited labor. I wasn't just his eyes. I was his talent. He had gaslit me into believing I was the lucky one to serve him. But without me, he was just a mediocre artist with 20/20 vision. I didn't feel sad anymore. Felt armed. The legacy auction was 3 weeks away. Sebastian was the headliner. I had 3 weeks to build a bomb. I started working at night. I sculpted a bust, an abstract twisted form called the truth. It was intricate, requiring hours of agonizing detail. But I built it with a flaw. On the left side of the neck, Deep in the folds, I left a microscopic ridge. To a sighted person, it was glaring. To a blind person, it was indistinguishable from the texture. Only a perfectionist who could see the shadow it cast would know it was there. I also went back to the spy shop for a remote-controlled thermal dye pack. I encased it in clay and embedded it deep inside the chest of the bust. I placed the bust on my workstation with a note. I tried, but I can't finish this. The neck is wrong. I'm throwing it out tomorrow. I watched on my tablet. 20 minutes later, Sebastian entered. He saw the piece. He circled it. He leaned in and saw the ridge. He glanced at the door, then grabbed a tool. With a few precise strokes, he smoothed the imperfection away. Then he carried the bust to his table, smashed his own project, and placed the truth in the center. He carved his signature into the base. He had stolen the bait. The night of the auction arrived. The gallery was a sea of diamonds. Rebecca held court, telling donors about Sebastian's divine process. Sebastian stood by the covered pedestal, wearing his dark glasses and holding his cane. I stood in the wings in a simple black dress, phone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer boomed, "we present the latest masterpiece from Sebastian Vance, a piece that came to him in a dream. The truth." He pulled the cloth away. The crowd gasped. The sculpture was magnificent. "Bidding starts at $500,000. 1 million, a voice called. 2 million. Sebastian beamed, nodding humbly. The price climbed to 5 million. I walked onto the stage. The auctioneer paused. Sebastian turned his head, sensing the shift. "Elena," he whispered into the mic. "What are you doing?" I walked to the podium and looked out at the faces who had erased me for years. I pulled a pair of cheap reading glasses from my clutch. "You'll need these," I said, my voice clear. I placed them in his hand. "What is this?" he hissed, trying to laugh. "You're confusing everyone." "For the flaw," I said. "The one you corrected last night. The ridge on the neck. You missed a spot." He froze. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you? You saw it. You fixed it. Just like you saw the expiration date on your soda can. Just like you copied my sketches." "Security!" Rebecca shrieked. "Get her off the stage." "Show them, Sebastian," I said. "Show them the miracle." I tapped my phone screen. A soft pop came from inside the sculpture. Steam hissed. Then, bright red dye began to bleed from the pores of the statue, pouring down like an open wound. The heat melted the clay, and it slid off in wet chunks. The crowd screamed. As the clay fell away, it revealed a welded steel structure underneath. The red dye washed over the metal letters, making them gleam. "I can see." The words stood 3 feet high. Sebastian recoiled. He threw his hands up to protect his face, his eyes wide and tracking the melting clay. "Oh God!" he shouted, stepping perfectly over a cord without looking down. "My eyes! Pain! It burns!" He realized a second too late. He stopped. He was staring at the words "I can see." His glasses askew, eyes focused and terrified. "You!" he whispered, looking at me. "You bitch." He saw me. Everyone saw him seeing me. The illusion incinerated. The fallout was an implosion. The foundation launched an audit and found $5 million in diverted funds. Sebastian went to a holding cell for fraud and grand larceny. 3 days later, Rebecca knocked on my door. She looked 10 years older. "Elena," she said, trembling. "We can fix this. Say it was a performance piece. A metaphor. A metaphor. For greed. For art. Think of the legacy." "I am thinking of the legacy," I said. "My legacy." I handed her a manila envelope. "An eviction notice for the studio. You can't evict us. That studio belongs to the Vance estate." "Actually, it doesn't. You put it in my name 4 years ago for tax purposes. You dumped the liability on the assistant." Her face went slack. She had forgotten. "You have 30 days to remove his equipment. Anything left behind will be sold to fund the legal defense of the artists he stole from." "Elena," she whispered. "You're ruining us." "No, Rebecca. I'm just turning on the lights." 6 months later, I stood in a sun-drenched loft in Chelsea. The sign read "The Restorers Gallery." I used the settlement money to establish the Ghost Grant for artists who had been overshadowed or stolen from. This is the justice of the sower. I didn't just want to burn Sebastian's world down. I wanted to plant a forest on the ashes. My victory wasn't his prison sentence. It was the 20 young sculptors working in my studio, signing their own names. I walked to my easel. Today the canvas was blank. I picked up a brush, dipped it in blue paint, and made a mark. It wasn't perfect. It was mine. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, share this story. Let's remind the world that the truth always finds a way to the light. Follow for more stories of justice.